Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our virtual workshop this evening, hosted by the City of Orange. Tonight, we'll be covering Senate Bill 1383 and organics recycling, looking at requirements and impacts for residents, property managers, and businesses. And we can move on to the next slide. Before we get further into tonight's workshop, we do want to note that this evening's workshop is being recorded. So this recording will be a resource. It will be made available on the city's website for later viewing. And we also want to note here a couple of Zoom features that you can take advantage of tonight. So we do have the Q&A feature enabled, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the workshop, but particularly toward the end, we have a dedicated open Q&A for workshop participants. So we invite you to take advantage of that Q&A feature and submit your questions through Zoom. And with that, we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So here is a basic overview of our schedule here for this evening. As you can see, the workshop started at 6 o'clock. We'll start off with a brief intro where we'll be talking about the city CR&Rs and Abound Food Care's roles. That really is a brief intro because we'll be giving a little bit of an overview of Senate Bill 1383 after that, and really spending the meat of our time on a panel discussion this evening. We're really excited to open it up to our expert panelists, who you'll meet shortly, and looking forward to digging into a lot of the frequently asked questions that the city hears and really getting those questions answered for you. And lastly, we'll be opening it up to participant questions this evening. And again, when we get to that point, that's especially when we'll be looking for your input in the Q&A feature, and getting as many questions as we can get answered there, as well as answering some questions that we've received as folks registered for the event. They submitted their questions for us to answer. So looking forward to all of that. But with that, we can move into our official introductions. So my name is Jen Nentwig. I'm a principal with Trippepi Smith. We're a public affairs and marketing firm assisting the city with organics recycling outreach. I'll next turn it over to Josh from the City of Orange for his introduction.
Thank you, Jen. Good evening, everybody. My name is Joshua Solis, and I am the POWorks admin manager here at the City of Orange. Part of my duties include managing the CR&R contract here for the solid waste services for the city.
Thank you, Josh. And next we'll introduce Ting Yao from CR&R.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ting Yao. I am a sustainability specialist with CR&R. We are the trash hauler for the City of Orange, and I'll speak more about my role and what I do specifically later on.
Thank you. And next we'll introduce Mike from Abound Food Care.
Hi, I'm Mike Liarakis with Abound Food Care. Abound Food Care represents and orchestrates the food donation component of SB 1383 on behalf of businesses.
Thank you. And then lastly, I want to introduce Susan, who serves as an advisor to Trippepi Smith on the solid waste side and is part of City Green Consulting. So over to you, Susan.
Hi, my name is Susan Silvestri, and I'm from City Green Consulting. I'm thrilled to be here today working in collaboration with Trippepi Smith to assist with SB 1383 outreach and education.
All right. Thank you all so much. And now that we have our introductions complete, I'll turn it over to Yao to give us our SB 1383 overview.
Perfect. Thank you, Jen. So as we have specifically mentioned a couple times already, this workshop, this panel is specifically focused on 1383. So my role in terms of everything is through CR&R as a sustainability specialist. I focus on education as well as program implementation. So helping make sure that everyone has the correct recycling and organics containers that they need, helping educate residents as well as business owners on how to properly use those containers, specifically how to recycle, how to compost, what can be placed in each container. So I'm actually one of the two specialists for the City of Orange So there's me and there's also Isabel, who's also in the call. There's two of us working. We work directly with Josh and the city in terms of making sure that everyone has what they need to be compliant, as in making sure that everyone is feeling educated as well as comfortable with everything that's going on. All right, so in terms of 1383, this actually isn't the first California recycling mandate that has been passed recently. So the two major regulations preceding 1383 are AB 341 and AB 1826. So 341 pertains more to recycling, specifically dry blue recycling that we commonly refer to. So these are your aluminum cans, your plastic bottles, your newspapers, your printer paper. 341 requires that anyone that generates over 4 yards of trash have a recycling program. So if you're a business, if you're a multifamily complex, as long as you generate over 4 yards of trash, you are required to have a recycling container. Or you can have, you can say that you self-haul your recyclables. So with 1826, this one has more to do with organic waste, so yard waste and also food waste. So any business or any multifamily complex that generates over 2 yards of trash is required to have organic services. Specifically, with 1383, it's kind of a step up from these two requirements. So it removed any sort of threshold. Essentially, any business, any multifamily complex in the city and across the state is required to have both recycling as well as organic services. And this law was passed in 2016, so it's been around for a while, but it actually didn't go into effect until 2022. So all this education and outreach and implementation is still pretty recent. And that's why we're kind of making sure that people understand what's going on and to answer any questions that anyone might have. Okay, next slide. So there's kind of two major reasons why California passed Senate Bill 1383. The first one is to address the issue of food insecurity. And food insecurity is a very major concern, not just in the state, but also nationwide. As you see on the slide, the major stat is that 20% of people that live in California are food insecure. So one of the main goals of 1383 is to recover edible food. So making sure that this food that can be donated is not thrown into landfill, but instead handled by food donation organizations such as Bound Food Care. Now, the second reason why California passed this requirement is to address the issue of climate change. And we all understand that climate change is a very serious issue. So with 1383, we are trying to reduce the amount of food waste that ends up in the landfill. And the reason why California wants to do this is because organic waste that ends up in the landfill produces methane and other greenhouse gases. And these greenhouse gases contribute and accelerate the effects of climate. There's two major goals of 1383. One of them is to reduce the organic waste disposal, and the second one is to increase the amount of edible food waste, that is recovered. And like I mentioned, these are the two major reasons why this was passed. And we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this graphic that was created by Trippepi Smith kind of introduces what happens to your waste that is thrown away. And it also kind of highlights why we are really encouraging, and the state is requiring everyone to kind of separate their trash into recycling, organics, and general trash. So your recycling actually is collected separately from your trash, and it goes to a completely different facility. And the good thing about that is it doesn't end up in the landfill, and instead is repurposed and also source separated. Now the organics goes to our facility in Paris. It's a CRNR facility that what it does is it converts your organic waste, so any yard waste and any leftover food, it converts that into compost and also natural gas. This facility is our anaerobic digester facility. So once organic waste comes into contact with bacteria, it releases biogas that can be converted to natural gas. So essentially, instead of leaving it in the landfill and causing methane and also worsening climate change, what we have done with this process is really repurpose and transform food and yard waste into something that's positive. Next slide. And I'll pass it back to Jen to go into our panel discussion.
All right, thank you, Ting-Yang. I think that gives a great overview and then does leave it open for a lot of the questions and, you know, getting into those answers that frequently come in from residents, so, and businesses and property owners. So on that note, if folks might not have been keyed into Senate Bill 1383 over the years and are still kind of curious, the key points about why this is happening and where it came from, what again are those key points that they should remember on that front?
Yeah, so in terms of 1383, as I mentioned before, it's something that has actually existed for some time now. However, we're really ramping up the implementation, and specifically, it went into effect in January 1st of 2022. And the reason why this sort of education has continued is in 2024, cities across the state are really trying to make sure that everyone has these correct services and making sure that everyone is sorting it correctly. So as I mentioned, the two goals are to reduce the amount of organic waste that is being left in the landfill, and also to make sure that we do our best to donate any edible food.
Okay, yeah, thank you for hitting those points again. And I think too, as folks might be seeing communications from cities and other jurisdictions, it's important to emphasize that it is a requirement coming down from the state. And so all of this compliance effort is really just to comply with the state regulation. So I'm glad that you emphasized that again. And then as far as putting it into practice, can you clarify what again is organics recycling versus blue recycling?
Yeah, so blue recycling is items such as newspapers and aluminum cans. We usually refer to them as dry mixed recycling, so paper, plastic, aluminum. But on the other hand, organics recycling, also called green recycling, is more so your food waste, your yard waste, so any leaves, leftover food, fruit peels, those are all green organics recycling.
Okay, and then for the city of Orange, is there a separate bin to use for organics, or do those go into the green bin?
Yeah, so specifically through CRNR, we have a couple of different kinds of organic containers. We have one that is for food waste only. So usually restaurants will have that container. But for a lot of our multifamily complexes, the containers can have both food waste and yard waste. And also residents as well. They have the one that can take both. So I would say the vast majority of the organics containers can take both. However, if it's a larger dumpster bin, it can only take one or the other. So either you have a food waste bin or you have a green waste bin.
Okay, thank you. And then thinking again about folks in the city of Orange, they might be wondering, why is this important to them personally, and what is the impact?
Yeah, so as mentioned in the slides, there's major implications for climate change and also the environment. And kind of doing some research, one of the main things that I saw was that methane is actually one of the most dangerous greenhouse gases. So one stat that I saw was it's up to 84 times more dangerous than carbon dioxide, which we all know is already very dangerous. So making sure that we avoid throwing any excess food waste or yard waste into the landfill is the main focus of 1383, and one of the biggest kind of positive things we can do to address climate change and also the environment.
Okay, thanks, Danielle. Then thinking about these changes and why it is so important, another question that comes up is what the city is doing to support residents during this transition. So Josh, could you hop in and explain how the city is providing that support?
Sure. Yeah. Due to the state mandate on the organics recycling, the city obviously has contracted here with CR&R Environmental Services to provide the various organic recycling options in order to meet that compliance requirements. There are various container sizes that are available, and should anyone be interested, you can contact CR&R to help right size your containers based on the amount of organics that you are generating. Additionally, we have a lot of resources at the cityoforange.org/solid waste website. I believe the link we're going to provide a little later, or if we can maybe type it into the chat. We have a lot of resources on there as far as what goes into which containers and for how to properly separate in order to meet those the compliance that the state is looking for on the organics recycling. On that website, you also see various public information videos explaining how to recycle the organics properly, and also describing on what happens to the organics once it's placed into the cart, how it goes all the way from the cart all the way out to the CR&R Roar anaerobic digestion facility, where that organic material is then recycled and transformed into compost and recycled natural gas.
Okay, thanks, Josh. And then kind of back to CR&R, thinking back to some information that you shared in the presentation, just wanting again to revisit what CR&R does with the organics and recycling waste. Can you remind folks what happens once it's collected?
Yeah, so in terms of the organics, as Josh mentioned, it goes to our facility, our anaerobic digester facility out in Riverside. And as Josh mentioned, the facility, what it does is it converts the yard waste and the food waste, as I mentioned, into compost and clean natural gas that powers our vehicles. So it kind of is this big loop that we the good thing is everything kind of stays in this loop. So with this yard waste, we're doing something that's positive instead of leaving it in the landfill. And in terms of the recycling, it's actually taken to our, depending on what city you are, some cities it's taken to the MRF. And what that does is the recyclables are actually sorted through by some of our facility workers. So they'll literally open up the bags and separate the recycling and prevent it from being left in the landfill. So that's kind of what we do with the recycling and organics. We always try to make sure that it's not being left in the landfill, because once it is, then there really isn't another path or a second option for it.
Awesome. And I think we have some questions on this later, but it does just point to the importance of putting things in the right bins so they can go to the right places. So thank you. And then shifting gears a little bit, I know we've talked about the waste management piece of things, but again, the initiative also has a part to play in helping with food insecurity. So Mike Larakos, can you talk more about that aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a common sense element of SB 1383, and it's the notion that we have excess edible food, and in order to keep it from going to the landfill, if we can get it to people in need and feed people with it, then it's a win-win. So what we have put together for the city and for CRNR is a program for businesses that are able to donate excess edible food, either through the SB 13.3 mandate or because they have excess food to donate. We have that ability to receive that food, orchestrate the transfer of food to nonprofit agencies that ultimately feed people in need. And so this becomes a vital source of nutrition for individuals, and that's kind of the win-win component.
Okay, and then thinking about businesses and those interested in taking part in donating, what are the benefits of donating besides compliance?
Yeah, aside from compliance, when you donate excess edible food, there's a tax deduction that you're able to take on it. So it's that ability to donate your food, feed people, get a tax deduction. There's also ancillary benefits to that as well. So for example, we're talking about organics diversion, meaning inedible food waste. This is an opportunity to reduce the amount of inedible food that we are contributing. But the other financial advantages is that when you start participating in a food donation program, typically operators will see where they can adjust their production or their procurement, and that leads to bottom line benefits. And then, of course, there's a marketing element of being able to support these nonprofits in our community that are feeding our neighbors. That's another win-win that provides cost benefits as well.
It sounded like a win-win-win-win, something along those lines. And then moving on to the city for the next question here. Does the city have a list informing residents and businesses of what goes where?
Yes, we do. Once again, on our City of Orange solid waste page, we have a list of the CRNR service guides, which in those lists outline where to properly sort which solid waste items into what container, their proper container they're supposed to go in. Also, the CRNR provides these service guides annually as a billing insert, so be on the lookout for them as an attachment to your bill, whether you get it electronically or in the mail. And additionally, on each container, there are labels where it lists the items that can be placed in the container, as well as items that are not allowed in the container. So that's a couple resources there that that are available to the public to help properly sort the right items.
Okay, thanks, Josh. And I know that there's a lot of great communications out there about what goes where, but sometimes it can be tricky and folks kind of have their habits that are tough to break. So Ting-Yao, from what you see at CRNR, what are some of the items that are most commonly sorted incorrectly, and how should those items actually be sorted?
Yeah, so I think one of the main things is in terms of organic waste. Usually we'll think of yard waste and food waste. However, there are certain items, mainly one of them being palm fronds. So any leaves that come from palm trees, these actually go into the trash instead of the compost. And another one is pet waste, trash should be in trash instead of compost. And also bones should be in trash instead of compost. Now, another one that we see a lot of is styrofoam. And sometimes styrofoam ends up in the recycling. However, styrofoam is trash. And another thing that we see a lot of is actually any sort of appliances or e-waste that ends up in the trash, in the dumpster. One of the major reminders that we always tell people is when you have electronic waste, make sure to call it in, either call us directly or contact your property manager. If you live in a multifamily apartment complex, definitely make sure to call it in because it needs to be picked up separately and it shouldn't be in the trash.
Okay, so folks who are tuning in are hopefully getting all this great information, and even if they are, sometimes mistakes happen. So just thinking through, what if someone accidentally puts an item in the wrong cart? In that case, what is the enforcement approach from the city and then from CRNR? So Josh, can you touch on that first?
Yeah, certainly. We understand that the accidents can happen, and both CalRecycle in the city promote an education first approach. You know, we will reach out, whether it be CR&R or the city, and, you know, do an education kind of recap on where to properly sort those items if there's something that's found that would contaminate the container. We encourage that, you know, all businesses and residents use the resources that are available to them. Once again, on the stickers on the cart or the containers, the city website, or the CNR sustainability team. Both Tingyao and Isabel are great resources that will take the time to come out and provide some education explaining the proper way to sort your solid waste.
On the CR&R side, anything you'd like to add in terms of enforcement?
Yeah, so usually, as Josh mentioned, our big emphasis is on education. So if we do see something that doesn't belong in a certain container, what we've done before is we'll put a tag on it. So this is it's kind of it's basically just like a paper slip that we can tie onto the container, and it's not a citation or anything. It's purely a education tool to tell you, oh, it literally says, oops, you put this in this container instead of this container. So it's not anything enforcement related. It's purely just educational. And that's what we do.
And just out of curiosity, Tingyao, too, if you could elaborate a little bit on the importance of putting the right things in the cart.
Yeah, so what I've kind of told people before is if you're unsure of what to put, let's say you have an item and you're unsure if it's trash or recycle, you're kind of on the fence about it. I have recommended people put it into the recycling container instead of the trash, actually. And the importance behind that is, as I mentioned before, if you put it in the trash bin, it just essentially automatically goes to landfill. However, if it is an item that can be possibly recycled, if you put it in the recycling container, there is a chance for it to be to not end up in the landfill. Essentially, you're giving us, and you're also giving the item an option instead of just directly sending it to somewhere where it can't be repurposed, where it can't be reused, essentially.
Okay, I like that tip. Thank you. And then on the note of putting things in the right carts, a frequently asked question is if there's a specific type of bag that folks need to use, either for the blue recycling or the organics. And that's
Yeah,
for
so yeah, for the food waste and the organic waste, you can for residents, you can put it into the cart. However, we do recommend that you use some sort of bag, and it can be either a clear plastic bag or a compostable bag to avoid any sort of spillage or odor. We do recommend that for organics, and also for recycling. Based on my understanding, we encourage residents, tenants, anyone, property managers and owners to not use bags for recycling, just because if it is dry and it is, if it's clean, then essentially you wouldn't really need a bag, and it kind of just creates more trash. So we do recommend not using a bag for recycling. But for compost, definitely make sure to use either a clear plastic bag or a compostable bag.
Okay, and by not mentioning this, you might have just answered this question, but for folks asking about just brown paper bags, is it okay to use those for food waste to go into the green bin?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so paper can be broken down, so it can be definitely used for food waste and yard waste and anything.
Okay, great to know. And I know some folks too, along the lines of brown paper bags, will sometimes line things in newspaper or things of that nature. So thanks for clarifying that. And then hopping back over to the edible food side of things, for folks who might be in need of food assistance, where would they go or who would they reach out to for that? Over to Mike for that one.
Sure. Yeah. If you're a resident of the city of Orange and you find that you are food insecure, meaning you're in need of food, you have several options within the city alone. You can go to a couple different avenues. One is on the city's website. We do have a list of agencies that receive food and also distribute food. But you can also go throughout the county to 211OC, either by calling 211 or going to 211oc.org for a list of agencies throughout Orange County that provide emergency or food services, along with the hours of operation, the days that they operate, et cetera. So that's where the best way to find those locations where you can get assistance.
Thank you. And then on the flip side, if folks want to help with food insecurity, can Abound Food Care connect those interested in helping with volunteer opportunities or other ways to help?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of the city of Orange. It is a connected and invested community. So there are always a plethora of volunteers that want to help out, citizens in the city that want to help. They can contact us at aboundfoodcare.org. Again, there's a list of those agencies on the website. You can contact them directly to see if there's a volunteer opportunity. But there's also multiple ways that you can volunteer and help out. Sometimes it isn't just distribution of food or handing out food. Sometimes you help repurposing food in a kitchen, or sometimes it's helping to sort through excess food. And those volunteer opportunities are available throughout Orange County as well.
Awesome. Thinking about those who might be part of a business, they might be asking, what if they have no excess edible food? Are those businesses still required to donate?
Yeah, so the law requires businesses that generate food waste of a certain size to be part of a food donation program. So the premise is that if you wait until you have excess edible food, and at some point, everybody has it for some reason or another, it's too late to find a program. So the obligation is to participate by making an arrangement to connect with a nonprofit agency that receives that food. We can assist with that at Abound Food Care. You would have to have an agreement in place that the recipient is an agency that is nonprofit. They will receive that food. And then you would ostensibly have to have a log of listing your donations. But we always advise have that in place first. So when the occasion occurs that you have excess food to donate, you already have a recipient agency that knows about you, is ready to receive your food, and you're ready for compliance.
Okay. And then this next one is a little bit specific, but what if there is nobody available to pick up the food in that case?
That's a great question. The obligation on behalf of the food waste generator or the business is to make the best effort to donate food. The reality is that food safety is a primary concern. So we have to make sure that that food has a recipient agency that can take it, can handle it safely. So if a business makes the attempt to donate food and there is no outlet, meaning there is no agency that can assist with the pickup or receiving that food, then the business owner has done their part. They've made that good faith effort to donate. And then there's also other possible solutions. So for example, to comply, if that excess edible food feeds staff members, then that is in essence the same as donating that food. You would still have to keep a log of identifying how much food was given to staff, how many pounds, but it serves that same purpose.
Okay, awesome. And then another specific scenario, but for those who might not be required to donate but would like to, if they have excess edible food to donate, what would be the next steps and how would they implement a program?
Yeah, the best steps is to contact Abound Food Care at aboundfoodcare.org. And we can connect you to these agencies that can receive. So we can onboard you onto a program using a tech platform if you choose to use it that will have an agreement as part of it, will serve as your log. So it's really easy. It's a one-step solution to being able to participate. And it isn't limited to just those businesses that are obligated in SB 1383. Again, this is an opportunity to recover excess edible food, get it in the hands and the mouths of people who need it. So we don't want to limit ourselves to just compliance. That option is still available.
Okay, thank you. That was a ton of great info. Our next couple of questions kind of look at the different potential types of folks who are stakeholders in the city of Orange and how they would get started or make sure that they are fulfilling their requirements. So first, for those who own a business in the city of Orange, what are their requirements and how can they get started? So I'll turn that first over to Ting Yao to chime in there.
Yeah, so for businesses, there's a couple of requirements. The first and main one being that they're required to participate in the recycling and also the organics program. And it depends on what kind of business, but for most non-food generating businesses, in terms of the organics, you can also request a waiver to indicate that you self-haul your green waste or your landscaper takes it away for you. However, for businesses, they are required, or for businesses that generate food, they are required to have both recycling and organic waste. And in terms of these containers, one of the main requirements is also accessibility. So per 1383, any areas that have a trash container also have to have a recycling and organics container, just to make sure that the containers are accessible. And the third one is that there has to be education provided to employees as well as customers and tenants on how to properly use the containers. And then I think that's it for at least for businesses.
Okay, and thinking of businesses, is there anything else that anyone else wants to chime in on that front?
Yeah, on the edible food recovery side, just to give you some guidelines, it's broken down into tiers. Tier 1 is going to be retail grocery stores and markets of a certain size, distributors, processors, farms. And then on a tier 2 side, which is that second level, is going to be retail operations like restaurants, hotels, schools, as well as hospitals. So it's broken down. But if you meet that criteria, then you would be obligated to participate.
And real quickly too, I'll follow up with the accessibility portion. There's also AB 827, which requires businesses that generate the various trash, recycling, and organics, that they also have to have the right containers for people that are self-disposing of their waste at the end of whatever service they might be experiencing there. So that you would see a 3-container type of system where you'd have a landfill, recycling, and organics recycling. So just something to also be aware there for the businesses.
Okay, lots of good initial steps there for businesses. So then moving along and thinking about single family residents, for those who are part of a single family residence in the city of Orange, what do they have to do to be compliant? And so I'll let Ting Yao chime in on that first.
Yeah, for single family residents, pretty self-explanatory. 1383 just requires that they participate in the curbside collection for both recycling and organics. And they also are required to properly sort their materials into their trash, into the recycling, and also the organics container as well.
Okay, thank you. And then thinking about single family residents, is there anything else that anyone wants to chime in on there? While folks may be thinking, I will add a question that we got from a registrant is just thinking about their carts and maybe the condition of carts. So if someone has a cart that is maybe old and not in the best shape, can they or should they request a replacement to be able to better follow the regulations?
Yeah, so if anyone has a cart that they would like to replace, whether it's due to it being broken, or I've also heard if the label is a little bit worn out or the color of the lid is incorrect, they can always contact CRNR's customer service team, and then they'll be able to arrange an exchange for you. And they'll always do it on the service day, so your cart will basically already be out there, and they could just swap it out.
Awesome. And I know we keep referencing cityoforange.org/solid waste. But all that contact info is right there on that webpage, so they can find it there. Okay, well then we'll move on to multifamily properties. So for those living in a multifamily property in the city of Orange, what are their responsibilities and requirements?
So if you're a resident of a multifamily complex, once again, pretty self-explanatory. The property manager actually has more responsibilities, but as a resident, your only responsibility is to make sure that you properly sort your materials. So once again, making sure that your recyclables go into the recyclable container, your organics goes into the green container, and your trash goes into the correct container as well.
Okay. So then, still speaking of multifamily properties, but thinking of the property managers, as a property manager in the city of Orange, other than setting up services for their buildings, what else would property managers need to do? Does information need to be incorporated into leasing agreements? And so that I'll turn over to Tina first.
Yeah, so with 1383, there's a couple requirements for property managers, and they're kind of similar to businesses. So besides setting up the services, property managers are also required to provide education to employees as well as tenants and residents on how to properly sort their organic waste. And from my understanding, that does not have to be from the property management or property managers themselves. They can definitely reach out to either Isabel or me, and we'll be able to do a presentation with the residents of the community. In addition, there's also a requirement for property managers to provide education to new tenants within 2 weeks of them moving into the property, just to make sure that they are aware of the bins that the community has and making sure that they're utilizing them correctly as well. And Josh, I think, did you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, also, just as a reminder too to the property managers, there's also an emphasis on ensuring that the containers are properly stored, right? We want to ensure that they are not visible from public view, and that where the location of where they may be placed on the property, that they are secured and stored so as to not cause any issues or be some type of nuisance. So just a reminder out there to the property managers when evaluating the location of the containers.
Great reminders there. Any other input from our panelists regarding information for property managers? Okay, well, we'll move on to our final question of the panel before we get into some open Q&A. As far as getting additional information, how can residents, businesses, and property managers in Orange find out more about organics recycling? And Josh, I'll turn that one over to you.
Yeah, so one of the best ways to stay connected and to stay up to date is to follow the City of Orange on its social media platforms. A lot of times we're providing great content out there, obviously on many city events that are coming up or news flashes that you need to be updated on. But also we use it as a platform and a way to push out information on organics recycling and other information on solid waste. Additionally, as mentioned, there's a lot of great information on our city website, as well as also on CalRecycle's website. CR&R has some information on recycling. So there's a lot of resources out there. And also as a reminder, feel free to contact any one of us here. We're always willing to reach out and clarify any information that's out there. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Jen.
Thank you, thank you. And I know we've mentioned the webpage cityoforange.org/solid waste, and that email address for questions. We'll remind folks again, but it's pwinfo for Public Works Info. So pwinfo@cityoforange.org. And with that, we'll jump into our questions and answers. So for our participants this evening, we invite you to take advantage of that Q&A and shoot us over your questions. But we also got a couple of questions from registrants. That was an option to submit your question as you registered. So we'll hop over to those. And we did get a couple of questions related to how to best handle the green carts and to keep them clean and pest-free. So the first question is, basically, if your trash doesn't get picked up, or if your trash is, if you're worried about having your organics sitting in that green cart for some time, how would you advise folks to keep their green carts from, the question was from getting gross. So how do you keep your green carts from getting less than clean?
Yeah, so we get this one a lot, and totally understandable. I think one of the biggest tips that I could provide to anyone with this issue is to leave their food scraps or their leftover food that they would otherwise throw in the cart. Immediately leave it in either the freezer or the fridge. So just basically treat it as leftovers. And once you do that, it will reduce any sort of odor issues that you might have. And up until the day that you have to throw it away, then you would put it in the cart. So instead of immediately putting in the cart right after you're ready, instead leaving it in the fridge, freezer, and waiting a couple of days before you actually have to throw away and leave your cart curbside.
Okay, thank you. That is a super helpful tip. And then maybe along the same lines in terms of the tips, but if folks are worried about pests, raccoons, other kinds of creatures getting into those green carts, are there any other tips that you've seen work well?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, definitely make sure to bag it in any clear compostable bag, any clear bag or any compostable bag. And that prevents any sort of, as you mentioned, rodents, pests. I feel like I have heard some of that before. However, it's definitely not as big of a concern as the odor issue. So as I mentioned before, leaving your cart in your garage in a secure location until it needs to be actually placed either curbside or outside of the enclosure.
Okay, those are great tips. And then on a similar note, we also received a question from a registrant asking about food waste containers that can be used in conjunction with the green carts. So sometimes those are called kitchen caddies or other containers. Do we know in the city of Orange, will containers for food waste be given out kind of in conjunction for use with the green cart? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so regarding the kitchen pails, the city of Orange doesn't regularly provide those. There are some events that CR&R will have those available, maybe at some community events. But any resident or business, they can find proper storage of those containers or kitchen pails online or maybe at a local store. Those are some options on where they can find a kitchen pail.
Definitely. I think that's good information. And it's also helpful to note that some folks have found success using things like takeout containers or yogurt bins or coffee bins or those types of things that might already be in your kitchen that you can also have an extra purpose as your food scrap container.
Yeah, you can certainly get creative with it.
For sure. All right, and we received another question from a registrant on the property management side of things, and their question is related to enforcement. Again, just kind of emphasizing how they could or should frame their leasing agreements. So Tanya, would you mind just emphasizing that one last time?
Yeah, so in terms of residents in a multifamily complex, that is essentially up to the property management company and what is actually listed in the leasing agreement. So it can definitely depend on the community that you that you live at. So it's not really up to the city discretion or anyone from the waste hauler side. It's more so what the property management company chooses to do in terms of that.
Okay, thank you.
And also to add to that too, Jen, is that CalRecycle does provide some information for property managers. And so I would direct an individual to the CalRecycle website where they can find some more information on that.
Perfect, thank you. And as we wait to see if we get more questions from our participants this evening, we can go around and just see if any of our panelists have any other thoughts that you haven't gotten to yet, anything else you'd like to add this evening. So I will turn it over. Josh, I'll wait for you till the end to see if you can have any concluding comments. But Mike, from Abound Food Care, anything that you'd want to share that you haven't already shared as part of the panel discussion?
No, I'd just like to reiterate that if you're a business that generates food waste in the city of Orange and you are obligated to participate in food donation SB 1383, the city and CR&R want to make certain that you have an avenue for quick, concise access to a program, and we're here to help.
Awesome. And from CR&R, teeing out anything that you'd want to make sure is highlighted that we haven't heard about yet?
Yeah, I didn't mention this before, but the best way to reach out to Isabel and I is through either our direct emails or our shared inbox. And that shared inbox is orange-recycles at crrmail.com. It's listed in all of our outreach materials. So if you once you receive your bill and you receive a separate flyer, it's also listed on there as well. That's definitely the best way to reach out to us. If you have any questions regarding what size container to have, what are the requirements, anything related to that.
Okay, thank you so much for those reminders. And Josh, from your end, just thinking from the city's perspective as a whole, anything you'd want to make sure is highlighted that you'd like to add?
Well, first off, I just would like to thank everybody who attended this evening, as well as anyone who might be listening to this recording at a later time. The city understands the difficulty in navigating some of these requirements that have been implemented. And the city, CR&R, Abound Food Care, Trippepi Smith, and Susan Silvestri is all, we're all resources here that you can reach out to. And we're here to help you navigate some of those compliance regulations. I'm sure after this meeting, there's going to be some other questions that come to mind, that tends to always happen, right? So we're not going away. Obviously, we're still going to be here, and we're always happy to help. So feel free to reach out to us after this meeting, and we'll do our best to assist you in whatever capacity we have. But thank you for attending.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for chiming in. Thanks for those inputs from our panelists. We have not gotten any new questions in our chat, so we've covered all the questions that came in from our registrants. So we will be wrapping up this workshop here shortly. We want to again thank everyone so much for joining. This recording will be posted to the city's webpage, cityoforange.org/solid-waste. And again, that is the resource that the city would point folks toward as really your one-stop shop for a lot of the information we covered here tonight. So again, please visit cityoforange.org/solid-waste. If you do have questions, you're welcome to email those to pwinfo@cityoforange.org. And all the contact info we talked about tonight will be on that webpage where you can contact the city or CR&R or Abound Food Care. So with that, we will be wrapping up this evening's workshop. Thank you again so much, everyone, for coming, and we look forward to continuing to talk with you on this topic soon. Thanks.